Good afternoon. This is the best slot ever because you might just want to snooze, right? So it's a perfect topic. Data probably puts people to sleep. But hopefully I'm going to bring it to life in terms of enterprise agility. We talk so far today quite a lot about our organizations, team topologies, our interactions, and remote working, cognitive load, all things that are pressing in our minds when we think about delivering value in an agile fashion to the enterprise. And this presentation particularly is quite relevant for me at this point at Nationwide, where I work. Nationwide Building Society is over 135 years old. It's a mutual, which means that who benefits from our business are the members. So the members receive our services, but also our benefit, they are our shareholders, so to speak. And data, for me, is the manifestation of the value we deliver. So when we provide great services, when we provide the right product for the consumer, for the member of the society, in my mind, that takes the shape of data. In front of our branches, how our colleagues welcome our members on the phone or on the mobile app, that's how I see my role as Chief Data and Analytics Officer in Nationwide today. How do we get that level of response, that enterprise agility, through the correct data and through the use of data in a way that is valuable to our members? Doing all of that, companies are very different, may have chief data officers that are focused on data science, chief data officers that are focused on compliance. So I know most of you, not most, I think maybe almost half of this audience is from financial services. So you might have chief data officers in your organization looking after GDPR, BC Best 239, IFRS 9, and things like that. So my background is really a mix of technology. I work for some technology firms. I work for a lot of technology functions. My academic background is in economics and data science, and my experience in financial services kind of dominated my life since 2000. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about here probably resonates more in this industry. We have this particular language that is, is data owned by the business? Is data owned by technology? Oh, databases are, data strategies are, but data is the business. So there is almost a language barrier when it comes to bringing this payload of technology to life, because it's neither here nor there. It cannot be used by the business without the tech. It cannot be owned by the tech because it's not the business. So I think one of the nudges that John Smart, who's here somewhere, sent to us last week is that every time I catch myself saying the word the business, I have to change it to our business. And I think for data, that's really, really good. That is the key word, is our business in the form of data. So for Nationwide, we are at this particular point in still going through what I call an old challenge, the challenge of catching up with software-based companies. So also in financial services, I'm sure there are some companies that were not in existence in 2000, let alone 135 years ago, that is pretty comfortable being a software-based company. We are not moving gold from this vault to that vault. We are still processing checks and things like that, right? A bit of paperwork. But mostly we're software-based companies. But also, we are trying to cross that barrier where data inflation made us feel like we are not as proficient in handling large volumes of data. It's inflation, not in the big data sense, which actually is a term we haven't heard for a long time, since the Hadoop days. But how, I describe that as the new challenge. How do we grapple this exponential growth of data, be that transactional, click data, be that the amount of archiving that Graham was talking about earlier today, in terms of space that it takes, why was it archived, how much do I have to retain, for how long? But also, personally, I believe that one of the value propositions that I bring is to try to define what the chief data officer should be doing for nationwide. And that's more of a personal opportunity. So that personal opportunity, I think, for me, takes the role of educator and delivery partner in a bit of a hybrid mode. And I started to develop this language of traps and opportunities or treasures for data, because that language was very trapped in the technology sphere. It was not a language that our mortgage business felt comfortable with. Data was not the language that left the realms of risk and BCBS regulation and became transparent to our credit card business or our current account business. So there is a little bit of education in my role. But why is data now impeding agility? I was going to say not helping with agility, but somewhat impeding agility. Part of it is that we copy slogans from other industries. We are not the Facebooks and the Googles, right? And you come into a traditional business that had to be automated, and all of a sudden you can hear these expressions like, oh, there is value in data, and data is the new oil. Oil maybe is not a good thing to say anymore, but like data is the thing, the new gold, as you were. We should treat our data as assets. Data is an asset, but it's not on the balance sheet, so it's not an asset. If you're interested in that, you have to read a book by Douglas Laney called Infonomics that really explains why it's not yet an asset. But also, big data technologies kind of permeate the language without meaning in those traditional organizations. Another unhelpful behavior, I call the antipatterns because of the audience here, right? So we know what patterns, antipatterns, something we like. But actually, trying to describe an antipattern of the issues magnet is to the business is very, very quite hard, to our business. Sorry, I just made a mistake there again. First of all, data is, as it travels through many software layers, through many people processes, from those checks to other documents that we scan and archive, the problem adapts itself. It is a classic, complex, adaptive system. If there is a blocker here, there will be a workaround by the end of the day, because we are going to close our books. If there is a pile of calls that we didn't get through, it's going to get flagged, and we're going to try to do it tomorrow. So there is an element of complex, adaptive nature to data that doesn't render itself very well to a unique owner. But the creation of a chief data officer around about 2015 was trying to do just that, pin all the data problems into an accountable function and get that function to fix it. So this behavior is not even an antipattern, but this natural behavior of there is a problem, there must be an owner, is one of the things that I have learned is not helping us achieve the level of agility that we want to achieve. So things like who's the data owner for customer data? Or who's the data owner for transactions? Who's the data owner for website traffic? There is a helpful intention there, that is to get people to take care of the quality, perhaps the timeliness and security of those data elements. But in a business of 15,000 people, you can see how nobody will want to put the hand up and say, oh, yes, yeah, I own the whole transaction, see savings, leave it with me, it's all done, right? So this is not helping us. It's actually making us chase this ownership concept without knowing why. And also, we're talking in very abstract fashion about data without the precision that it's required for us to be scientific about agility, to be scientific about improvements. So we talk about that quality is not very good or data is not very timely in this particular system. We like to talk about systems a lot, but not actually pin down what's wrong with it. And more so, how we try to describe what's wrong in terms of system ownership. So we are drowning in data like you saw in the morning with the warehouse. I actually need to get that picture from Graham later to kind of embellish this narrative a little bit more. But it felt to me like we have been trying to define this problem within the financial industries more than anything else, what is actually not a problem for the industry is a problem that data is not your property, is usually the property of the individual. We are just the stewards of it. And it doesn't allow itself to be held in a particular ecosystem, right? It flows from system to system. It flows from what's our data, what's regulatory data, what is social media data, what is data you share with HMRC. There is no concept of internal, external anymore. So we've been trying to apply old concepts, old boundaries, old ownership and accountability definitions to a new problem space, which is caused by that inflation, right? Storage is cheap when you compare it to what it was perhaps a few decades ago. But actually, it's hindering quite a lot of our progress when it comes to our specialisms, the skills that we need to manage and use it properly. We have also detected in our quest for agility that we are trying to make all jobs look like digital jobs. So having specialists in UX or specialists in a particular containerization technique has not served data very well. Multidisciplinary teams do. Teams of specialists that know how it can be used to actually have some value, and teams that are proficient in technology must work together. So we shouldn't try to convert one into another. Not all data scientists are developers. Not all developers are data scientists. And we are crossing that chasm as we learn more about what we want to do with data. And there is something I've been discovering that is more helpful towards promoting enterprise agility with the better use of data. One is that a data function, maybe an MIS function, business intelligence function, or even a data governance stroke management function, which arguably is everybody's job. Everybody in the knowledge business is handling data. I'm discovering that the more we act as partners and less so of service providers, the better the result is. It's pretty obvious when I say it like this, but actually not sitting there waiting for what is the insight you want from data, let me go and prepare it for you, is not that obvious. There are some behaviors that we were exhibiting in our community of data analysts and specialists that felt a bit like that, a little bit more like, commission some work and I'll deliver it to you, where actually the value to create enterprise agility is to answer the question with even a better question. Say, oh, what do you really want to know? I don't have that data, but I have a proxy for it. Does this answer look right to you? Or actually, is it good that it doesn't look right to you? I think a little bit like the Welsh government, when you are trying to iterate so rapidly, that partnership is much more valuable than just getting the question, packaging it up, creating some software, some dashboards, and delivering it. That conversation between the data specialists or the MIS department and the business, our business, has highlighted that very few finance specialists have seen data as a raw material and a product. They've seen it almost as an impediment to doing the job they want to do. So that has developed for me a very useful view of how I can create, let's say, a meaningful metaphor for businesses that are completely virtual. We are not completely virtual. We have branches, we mortgage properties, so we have collateral in those properties. So it's not, strictly speaking, all bits and bytes in our database, but very much, very, very close to it. Without the tight data management, those businesses don't operate. But we don't see it as we would see going to the BMW manufacturing plant and actually see metal turning into cars or plastic or whatever else that goes into it. So a helpful behavior is visualize everything. Well, how do you visualize something so abstract and so difficult to see inventories piling up, to see machines broken, to see machines overheating? This concept of creating X-rays of our systems is, at the very least, creating a better language of raw material and product in terms of data. And then create the leadership capability that is more adequate to managing that job. And here we are self-selecting audience, right? We're here because we chose to be here. But that is not necessarily what's happening broadly in your organization. When you can compartmentalize digital or you can compartmentalize tech, that may be okay. You get leaders of functions like this to speak the same language and row in the same way. But when you're talking about data in such a way that it's like the first picture, no here nor there, neither here nor there, in terms of business and technology, that cannot happen. You need leaders that are still engaged in understanding their role in managing their data. So those helpful behaviors are the ones that are nudging us forwards a little bit more around that turnaround time between question and answer. We try to create service level agreements for those questions and answers before. 2 weeks to provide a report. But actually, as you have seen with COVID, if you have a question today, maybe in 2 weeks' time, it's not going to be a relevant question. You probably won't care anymore about the answer. If you're under pressure with your call center volumes and you have low volume of visitors in a particular branch and you need to react on how you alleviate those phone queues with colleagues that are perfectly capable of addressing a customer on the phone, why wouldn't we be using that? And that is all the types of questions that require answers here and now, not next week and in 2 weeks' time. So we've just been practicing, right? And practicing the X-ray idea of, it's not about the boxes and the systems that you build. It is a lot about that, as we have seen with the team topologist talk as well. It is about how you create the teams to interact better with each other. But truth be told, the systems are still managed in isolation. They have their own source code repository. They build this way. They test that way in different types of technologies and levels of maturity. But our challenges around data is the actual translations between them. It is actually the amount of checklists that you may do automatically and the controls you have around your processes physically. Is it running? Is it running correctly? Is it performing well? But then you have also the handshakes when that doesn't happen. There are attestations every now and then to say, yes, is your data correct? Yes, I'll sign here that it is correct. But how do you know that? So looking from an X-ray point of view, what's happening in between the boxes is what is nudging us forwards in terms of our data management discipline. And we're trying with many things. Some of them may be terms that you adopt in your own organization, some test and learns around how do we virtualize our state, how do we mesh it so that we can see as a fabric rather than as boxes and lines, how do you visualize it better, and how do you control it on the wire. These are experiments that we are running to prove or disprove that data can be controlled wherever it happens rather than at the center, in order to then obviously get more value from it. So putting the antipatterns and the helpful behaviors together, I realized that there are very, very few things that we need to do very well to be giving that enterprise agility its rightful name. One is not to box ourselves into functions like data scientists, data engineers, digital developers, and our tribes, right? Actually embrace more diversity in our teams. Sometimes we don't build the teams to be multidisciplinary from the word go, but they need to become that. And beginning at the executive level, whereby this idea that push the data problems to one executive is proven not to work. The other one is from the shared mental models, the designs on a page, and the actual lines and boxes and lines is not really going very far when you need to actually know what data is being moved from where to where at all times. So you need more of a production line sensorial input than a mental model to do a good job. And this is the contrast with the messy warehouse, again from Graham this morning. You know, we want to know how to manage information well enough. This is a picture from Trinity Library, Trinity College in Dublin. And wouldn't we love to be able to pull up an index and know where things are, and we're nowhere near it? And to do that, we need librarians, and we need, you know, a code of conduct. One ought not to copy data and not tell anyone, and use that as a golden source somewhere, and so on and so forth. So that's all I wanted to share with you today, but also, more importantly, there's a wealth of thinking that needs to come closer to the data space that I wanted to make sure I called out, because we are here just standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Now, none of these are particularly my ideas, but I do take comfort that we as an industry, as a cohort of professionals, have much to learn from each other. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.